Hello, my name is Clay Holmes. I'm both a grateful member of Al-Anon, but primarily I'm a grateful member of Unity of Springfield. And it's great to be here today. I see some very friendly faces out here that I love very much, and helps a lot, believe me, because doing this with nobody in front of you is kind of like acting on stage with no audience. So what I'd like to do today is let you all know that the program that I have prepared here to teach you all about, has to do with a book called The Dilemma of the Alcoholic Marriage. You'll have to bear with me. I've been struggling with my voice with some laryngitis, so I'll just soldier on as best I can. And what this book is all about, this book helped me tremendously. I am a refugee from a 30-year marriage to an alcoholic that I finally realized that I wasn't going to change her. Glory be, the only person that can change another person is that person. It took me a while to get that though. But thankfully I did have some resources along the way, which included not only this book, but the ODAT, which stands for One Day at a Time, which is a daily reader. I also read from Courage to Change. I get inspiration and a lot of value from a lot of other sources too, but conference approved literature like this is, I mean, it's kind of like when you think about the articles in the what's it called, the New England Journal of Medicine, where they're all peer reviewed and you know that they're like, what do you call it, boilerplate. That's what these books are like, because they've been vetted and peer reviewed by people in the Al-Anon program. So I've gotten so much out of it. I like to go at least once a week, if not 2 or 3 times a week, to Al-Anon. And I cannot emphasize what the 12 steps of recovery, what they can do for a person, what they've done. I can only speak for myself. And I was a really hot mess when I came into Al-Anon. I thought that I could cure, control, and forget the third C. There's 3 C's in our program. What's the third one? Do you remember? Oh, go ahead. Do you have a question?
Yes.
You'll have to come up and get the microphone, or it won't be able to be broadcast. What's your name, first of all?
Monique.
I'm Monique. Welcome.
Thanks. So you're telling me there's 12 steps for Al-Anon? 12
steps from Alcoholics Anonymous were borrowed over 60 years ago by, let's see, it's Mr. Wilson, the guy that started AA. His wife, I can't think of her name off the top of my head, but anyway, there's a famous icon in Al-Anon, and it's a shoe. It's a woman's pump. And the whole reason that it's there is that she got so pissed off one time about the fact that her spouse had a place where he could find solutions to his problems, and she didn't have anything. And guess what? That motivated her. She threw the shoe across the room. You know, that's all I know is that's the significance of the shoe. And frustration, and decided from that action that, hey, I can do this for myself. We can start a 12-step program. We can borrow the same valuable steps that AA has. There's only one difference, and that is in the 12th step. The alcoholics say, in AA, they say that they want to bring the message to other alcoholics. We just say to others. So it's what's good for the goose is good for the gander. Let me put it that way. To come to accept that alcohol has a controlling influence on your life, and that's like the very first step besides getting an understanding, finding a God of your understanding. And that's really the crux of finding recovery. I have a pretty good idea that I would either be, I hate to be dramatic, but dead or in jail if I hadn't been introduced to Al-Anon. And I was introduced to Al-Anon by some counselors because my spouse, I did an intervention with their help and told her that I was going to take our toddler children and leave her if she didn't go get help. And she did decide to get help. But I might get a little emotional when I talk about this stuff, but there's a gentleman by the name of John Bayless. He's no longer with us now, but he's a revered member of AA. And he had only about 2-3 years of sobriety then. When he passed on, just within the last year or so, he had almost 40 years of sobriety. And he agreed to come and be a part of that intervention because he had partied with her and he was clean and sober. And if he hadn't come, I don't think she would have gone. And we did. I'm thankful for that because we did have a few years of sobriety. That was all on her. I had nothing to do with it, even though I thought I did at the time. That's, again, they talk about alcoholism and addiction being the only diseases that tell you that you don't have a disease. Well, guess what? Untreated Al-Anonism is the same way. We don't believe we have an issue either. We're the Holy Roman martyrs of the group. We're the people that pay the bills and keep the household running, and then we can go and bitch about it, So, in fact, that's what a lot of people do when they first come into Al-Anon. Is just it's a complaint fest for a long time, and I can tell you that there is a solution. In fact, in part of the ending, whenever we close each meeting, they talk about how there is a solution, even no matter how just bereft of any kind of hope you have, there can be hope. That's why I kept going to Al-Anon, was because of the hope.
Isn't there an Al-Anon meeting here?
There absolutely is on Saturday nights. I don't know if it's still called this, but that was my original meeting way back in the day. It was held over on at the Oddfellows Hall way out on West Chestnut, kind of close to that, not as far as the auto zone, but in that vicinity. And that's where John Bayless actually started that. John Bayless started the AA meeting there, and then an Al-Anon meeting went ahead and popped up in conjunction with it. And we used to have dances with the Al-Anoners and the AAers and at that spot. It holds a special place in my heart. They're not holding them anymore there. They moved over to the IBEW, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers building out there at Glenstone on Glenstone. It's on Division. So in any case, there's there was a lot of recovery that went on in that building, a whole lot of recovery. And just to give you one little example, there was a close friend of mine named Chris. You wouldn't mind me sharing this. I'm not going to tell her last name, obviously, because this is a program of anonymity. It's a very important portion of it in order for healing to take place. We don't accept any gossip or any kind of in fact, during the meetings, everyone shares and no one interrupts the person who's sharing. It's a program of very profound dignity and learning, and it's a source for me for strength and hope from other people to hear their experiences, because we're all the same underneath. We're the same as the alcoholics. We're just looking for love, and we have in fact, I'm going to talk about that during this talk because this is about communication between an alcoholic and Al-Anoner that happen to be married. Now, this book is pretty old, so it has a gender bias in it. In other words, back in the day, there were very few men that went to Al-Anon. In fact, I got so resentful of there not being very many men in the Al-Anon meetings I went to way early, like in the 90s, that I quit for a while, but then I heard that there's a guy named Colonel Tom who started Al-Anon in Springfield. A man started Al-Anon in Springfield, and man, I kind of was humbled by that when I came back. Besides, that was stupid of me and selfish of me too, because more and more men have been coming to Al-Anon and getting help there. Men are more prideful than women. Women are more willing to look at themselves and try to change than men are. So this is a really, really needed program, especially for men. But as I said, this book was written when not very many men were going to Al-Anon. Therefore, there is kind of a gender bias in it. A lot of it is like from the perspective of the woman who's married to an alcoholic. So you'll see that as I go along. I'm going to start out talking about the spouse as an individual. Or I'm just going to make this flat out statement, which is true. Al-Anon is not for counseling. Al-Anon is strictly for guidance only. I'm going to read this real quick. The basic purpose of Al-Anon is to help us, its members, solve our personal problems. And it's important that a newcomer to Al-Anon realize that our fellow members are not equipped by training or experience to advise, judge, or counsel in intimate personal problems, and particularly not in those involving complex family relationships. That is the function of the psychiatrist, the clergyman, the social worker, or others with a professional background for this work. Now, there's been a great deal of research by professionals into the effects of alcoholism on marriage. There's a plethora of books on it, and many of those books have no mention at all about recovery or the 12 steps, which is, to me, kind of a blind endeavor. But anyway, the results of the research are usually of interest only to other professionals in that field, in those various fields, because they are written in language that's too technical for the layman to understand. And those which are written for the general public, they rarely make suggestions that an individual could successfully apply to his or her problem. And those who do work in the field of marital relations know it's futile and sometimes even dangerous to make recommendations without personal consultation with the people involved, because each situation is unique. Each is confused by conflicting emotions and reactions that are rarely the same in any two cases. And we don't give advice in Al-Anon. We encourage people to listen to others and get a sponsor, work the steps for your own life, and focus on yourself. Don't some people really mess up and unfortunately do give advice like, oh, you should leave your spouse. Oh, you should never accept that kind of treatment. And we'll be talking about that a little bit later if we have time. That's not what goes on. That's not what's going to produce the solution. The program is based on the conviction that most of us have the power to bring about substantial changes in our relationship and living conditions by searching out and correcting our own shortcomings. Not the alcoholics, our own, not the addicts. As those changes occur, each of us knows what the course of action is right for that time and that situation. All right, I'm going to go on to talk about the spouse as an individual. And I'm going to read from this, and this is an extremely important part of this book. Increased awareness of themselves and each other, which both partners can gain through understanding and practice of the AA and Al-Anon programs, can solve many seemingly insoluble problems. I've witnessed it. I'm here, if somebody said, can I get a witness? Hey, I'll raise my hand. I've seen people, frankly, I've seen miracles that I didn't think a relationship would ever be possibly repaired after some of the hideous and just heinous things that had happened and these people had done to one another. It's not ever hopeless, though, however. An open door to the helpful answers is communication based on love. I'm going to repeat that. The open door to helpful answers is communication based on love. This communication depends on awareness and respect for each other's unique individuality. This also means concern for each other's well-being and willingness to accept in another which might not measure up to our own standards. Wow, what a concept, because that's where I was coming from. She wasn't measuring up to my standards. She was stepping out on me. She was drinking. She was hiding the drinking. She was committing crimes. That didn't measure up to what that's not what my mama and daddy taught me was the right way to live. So again, though, I had to figure things out through Al-Anon. I couldn't have done it any other way. And that such love also requires a measure of self-esteem, an awareness of our own good qualities. That's another part and parcel of being in the disease of alcoholism, because people think, oh, I'm not diseased. Well, ask yourself a question. Are you affected by the disease of alcoholism? Because if you are affected, and typically it's negatively, then you are diseased. And you have to think about what ramifications those hold for your life and how you can help yourself. So that awareness of your own good qualities, this whole thing, I didn't have any, I didn't even think I was worthy of replacing my underwear when it got holes in it, because I felt so low and worthless. I did another thing that's I'm not very proud of saying that I did, but it happened. I would watch, this is going to date me, but I would watch the Johnny Carson monologue every single night, and I would memorize his jokes so that I could tell them at my workplace the next day, so that I would be worth talking to, because I didn't think I was. I didn't think I had anything worthwhile to add unless I borrowed it from somewhere else. That's a very sad and lonely place to live. I want to go to the commandment, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself, because it clearly implies that we cannot love another person unless we feel ourselves worthy of being loved. Thus, Al-Anon also teaches us the unique value of our own persons and our own lives, just as no other human being should be subjected to our control. So we too must feel free to reject tyrannical domination. More about that later. For all of us are, in the last analysis, subject only to whatever higher power we choose as a guide for our lives. And for me, it's spirit, but everyone is individual. What they say in the newcomers in the meeting, pick something for a higher power. It can be that chair over there for starters. Just remember that you're not your own higher power, because that in itself, it's a lost cause. That's a fool's errand to be your own higher power or to put someone else in that place. When I got divorced and separated and divorced from my spouse, I rekindled an old flame and I made her my higher power. And that was a huge, painful, horrible experience, because I smothered her. I sent her love poems all the time. I sent her songs like 4 or 5 times a day. I was out of my mind. I thought that, oh, of course this person is going to welcome all that. Guess what? They hated it. And he said, you're smothering me, get lost. And I can't blame them looking back. That there's, this is the power of the recovery, is that you can recognize and see where you're messing up and try to make changes. The poet Rainer Maria Rilke said it this way: once we realize that even between the closest human beings, infinite distances continue to exist, the wonderful living side by side can grow up if we succeed in loving the distance between them, which makes it possible for each to see the other whole against the sky. A good marriage is that in which each appoints the other guardian of his individuality. And that's some sage words right there. So again, each of us is responsible to himself and for himself. As the founder of Al-Anon has said, we can't get into someone else's head and turn the wheels that will make him or her behave in the way we think is right. Applied to the close personal relationship of marriage, this gives each partner freedom to be himself or herself, to strive for a good adjustment in to life in his or her own way, and far from creating an impersonal relationship. This emphasis on one's own individuality creates mutual respect and trust. That's a special, special bond, which are the very foundations of a good marriage. Okay, I'm going to go on into the problem, which is the nature of the dilemma. While the drinking is active and day-to-day problems absorb the attention and energies of the spouse of an alcoholic, the matter of sexual maladjustment often falls into the background. There may be difficulties, of course. Some alcoholics, sexually stimulated by liquor, may make brutally aggressive and sometimes violent assaults to which their spouses react with fear or disgust. Others become totally incompetent sexually, depriving their partners of this vital element of marriage. The interaction and attitudes established in such ways are often too deep to be changed simply by the alcoholic becoming sober. Years of compulsive drinking may have brought about radical emotional changes in both partners to the marriage. The alcoholic may be inhibited by guilt over his behavior when he was drinking. The spouse by remembered violence, deprivations, withholding sex, infidelities, and other humiliations. These reactions may persist even long after the drinker has become sober. Help is needed to establish a healthier relationship. Now, when a woman marries a man, again, this is focused on women mostly because that was the majority of the audience for this book. When a woman marries a man who drinks alcoholically, she may be accepting a sex problem along with the alcoholism. Many a person enters blithely into such a marriage with the romantic notion that love will overcome all, that the magic of togetherness will transform the devoted but alcoholic lover into a sober, responsible husband. Wow, that's called the magical thinking. I think that is a word for that. This risk is often doomed to failure. She soon learns that even love is no match for the compelling desire for alcohol. And to make matters worse, she may find herself confronted with a sexual inadequacy or indifference that in itself may stand in the way of his achieving sobriety. That's kind of like a byproduct of alcoholism is, frankly, being unable to perform, because alcohol does that. On the other hand, a woman who is maladjusted sexually herself due to influences in her background may find a convenient excuse for her problem by blaming it on the alcoholic. Oh, that's convenient, as the church lady says. The man who marries an alcoholic may find that he has a wonderful sex partner as long as she's drinking, but that she comes unresponsive when sober. That's an interesting dynamic. Or if he is unable to respond to her sexual demands because he finds her unattractive. Nobody really likes somebody who's got really, the burping beer breath in your face. Even repulsive when she is drunk, she may humiliate and ridicule him. I can tell you that happened to me. Such scenes are not easily forgotten and can cause difficulties which carry over into sobriety. Yet one dependable fact emerges. The reestablishment of a satisfactory sex relationship may be brought about if both partners are willing to contribute to the partnership the patience, loyalty, respect, and honesty that are built into the Al-Anon program. Okay, this goes on to talk about the alcoholic's dual personality, but that's not what I wanted to focus on. I want to go on to manners and ways, methods of communication. And again, what's the foundation of interpersonal relationships between human beings? It's communication. The quality of human relationships depends largely on the way we communicate with each other. It depends not only on what we say, but how we say it. Glory be. Not only on what we do, but our motives for doing it. Our tone of voice and even our smallest actions are elements of communication. Many of us aren't even aware of this. I know I wasn't until my eyes were open. I took some interpersonal communication classes, and I'm like, wow, I can communicate just by a little overt look or not even making eye contact. Do you have a contribution?
I want to say before you finish today, make sure you let the people. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't.
Use the mic.
Oh, I don't need a mic.
You have
I
to come
talk
over
loud.
the internet.
Before you finish today, make sure you let the people share their experiences.
Don't worry, that's part of it. That's part of this.
That's all I wanted to be sure you do.
No worries, man. Everybody that contributes here knows that. Thank you. When partners in a marriage are held together by a bond of love, by the way, who is that dude?
Larry Pegg.
Okay, he's got some issues, I think.
He's been away for about 10 years, but he used to come a long time ago.
Okay. When partners in marriage are held together by a bond of love, mutual respect, and a desire to please and comfort, communication naturally falls into patterns that express these feelings and give both husband and wife confidence in each other and a sense of security and mutual dependence. You know, when I first read this, it seemed foreign, but now it makes perfect sense to me. But it's really just kind of common sense. When a relationship is distorted by an unbalanced dependence, or by suspicion, hostility, excessive demands and expectations, these flaws reveal themselves in the way that the people communicate with each other. If a man marries a woman because he was attracted by her warm maternal quality, that happens a lot, as many alcoholics do, because a lot of them, they have mama issues, just to put it bluntly. He's likely to be the dependent one. And she, attracted to him because of her unconscious desire to mother someone, will be the practical member of the family. She may later bemoan the fact that he has failed in his role as head of the house, not aware that it was she who took the reins and did all the managing. It's so interesting how we can have such blind spots in our perception. And while she is managing him, the children, the household, and the finances, she's awash with self-pity. And that's not just the woman in this case. I was awash in self-pity when I was doing all that stuff because of that big load that I had to carry. And it really doesn't help that all of my family members that knew what was going on, they would say, "Oh, Clay, you are so great. You ought to be sainted. Look at you taking care of those girls while this horrible devil woman that you married is just going on about and carousing around." That's not helpful. That's just more destructive. So they mean well, they don't know what Al-Anon is about, and they don't know what recovery is about. So I forgive them for it. If he is drinking, her constant protective watchfulness makes it easy for him to sidestep getting help. He has no incentive to get sober. Why would he get sober? She's probably even going and buying his liquor for him. She convinces herself that she's doing her very best for him. She hasn't learned, as she would in Al-Anon, that shielding him from the consequences of his drinking only prolongs its course. See, that's again a major part of denial, is that you think, oh, well, they're going to see how nice I am to them, and they're going to change. Sorry, this is a disease. All bets are off. You're not going to change or fix somebody else. They've got to do that themselves. Because when he's drunk, her reaction is to reproach him for his behavior. And that's the very worst time to attempt to communicate with him. Why? Because if he's drunk, he probably ain't going to remember it anyway. You're just basically wasting your breath. In fact, it can't be done, again, without triggering a family war. Now, if a man married a woman because she's shy, timid, and submissive, he unconsciously chose a wife who would satisfy his need to dominate. If she turns out to be an alcoholic, he will have the complete dependent he wants, no matter how desperately he thinks that he wants her sober. And I can remember having relationships like that before. My actual relationship with my spouse was kind of like that, because I thought, well, I can manipulate her, when she's drunk. I don't know what I was thinking, but it was twisted and it was messed up. He too will cover up her drinking. I've done that. Paid the bills. Protect her from public disgrace. I've done that. And assume all the responsibilities which should be hers. I've done that. Such distorted relationships are often found in alcoholic marriages, and they inevitably lead to the drying up of the communication which is vital to a good marriage. It's just not going to happen, people, if you allow these kinds of weeds to sprout up in your relationship. Unless you weed them out, it's not going to be good. So this suggestion from an AA member has proved successful in many cases. This is their words. The alcoholic may experience blackouts. He appears to be functioning, but he usually doesn't remember what he did or said. He suspects that something did happen, and his anxiety and nameless guilt are almost unbearable. If you're sorry for him, you might think it's unfair to torture him by telling him what his drinking led to. But it's kinder and more constructive to relieve his mind and tell him frankly what he needs to know. He has a right to know what his drinking is doing to him. If you go to him without anger and reproach and tell him quietly what happened, you'll be helping him to see himself as he is. My wife did just this for me, and it was the single most helpful thing that ever happened to bring me to sobriety. I had no idea how far I had fallen from my own ideals until she came to me one morning and told me what I had done the night before, as soon as she had spoken her piece. She excused herself and quietly left me to figure out for myself what I was going to do about it. But the alcoholic must be allowed to draw his own conclusions. If you tell him how he looked, how he acted, what you think of him, it won't work. What you think of him because of it, it won't work. He'll just fall back on the old excuse. She's picking on me again. And then he'll have a grievance against you that will sustain him over this bad time. Give him another excuse to drink. So, I'm going to move on to a meeting that inspired members to explore their own motives and to understand how they were performing in their communication with their partners. The topic was, do you say what you mean? Do you mean what you say? Many of the difficulties of achieving good communication lie not only with the alcoholic, but with the spouse as well. I hated hearing that, man. I hated hearing it. It's part of my blame. I didn't want to be blamed. It was easier to point, but we heard this in Al-Anon too. If you're pointing a finger, you've got four fingers pointing back at you. Okay, the stresses and uncertainties that she lives with each day, the dread, the fear, the anger, have so distorted her reasoning powers that most of her reactions are emotional and often destructive. So, this chairman of this meeting asked the members, why don't we say what we mean? And why aren't we honest enough to confront the troublesome partner with some straight truth? They're surely obvious enough, but if we fail to let the alcoholic know how we feel about things, how will he know? I mean, trust me, alcoholics are just like everybody else. They can't read minds. What's going to motivate him to find sobriety if we let him believe that his behavior is acceptable? Each person spoke in turn. Here's the answers. I don't say what I think because I want to avoid fights and trouble. I guess I haven't learned to distinguish between saying disagreeable, critical things and making plain statements about a situation that will throw light on them without hurting his feelings. The next speaker said, oh, I'm afraid to tell him what I think. Usually I think of nothing but criticizing him for what he's doing, and I know that's wrong because he's sick. At least he understands it's a disease. And when he's sober, he's so nice and kind that I hate to bring up unpleasant things that happened. And anyway, aren't we supposed to work on ourselves in this program? Telling him how we feel about the things he does seems to me the same as taking his inventory. That's a little twisted. So commenting on these two remarks, the chairman said this, you know that no improvement can be accomplished unless we are consistent. If we haven't the courage to speak up when the drinker is in a sober phase, he'll just keep on believing that there's no limit to what we'll tolerate. But we have to know what we think before we say it convincingly. We can't just bury it and hide our heads under a blanket of hope. Our husbands have a right to know what we expect from them. Again, there's that gender bias. It's up to them to decide whether or not they want to live up to our expectations. Not letting them know how we feel is dishonest. It's just another way of pretending we accept the situation when we don't. It's a cop-out. If we want the alcoholic to face reality, we must face it first and not be afraid to share our feelings. I don't think that's the same as nagging, as long as we don't repeat ourselves, and I don't think it's the same as taking his inventory. What do you think? Well, the next member spoke up and said, well, it's bad enough to sidestep saying what we mean, but it's even worse to say what we don't mean. My long-standing habit of blowing my top when my husband was drinking lasted long after he was sober in AA. I reacted to anything that annoyed me with the first angry words that came to my mind. I'd forget that he was just getting back some of his long-lost self-esteem and would say something bitter that would undermine it. I guess I wanted to hurt him because of all he put me through in the past. But I'm getting over that. I began to realize that the hurtful things I was saying really hit home. He actually believed them, and I didn't mean them at all. I'm doing better as time goes on, but I have to keep reminding myself, don't say it unless you mean it. And that has kept me from saying a lot of things I later wished I hadn't. Well, what emerged out of that meeting was finally summed up by the chairman. We can say what we mean only if we have the courage to be honest with ourselves and with others. We must know why we are saying it. If it's to impress, to belittle, to convey our self-pity and resentment, it ought not to be said. That would only widen the rift, and we want to close that gap. And we can mean what we say only if we stop the rash statements before they hit the air. You can't take back the words you say. As it says in the Bible, the words can cut like a knife. Now let's all go home and try to do a better job of saying what we really mean, not saying what we don't mean. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to raise your hand. This next section is about what do your actions communicate. Now personally, I never even analyzed that at all. I thought, well, anybody that sees my actions, unless they're lame-brained, they can tell what I'm trying to communicate. Well, guess what? I was way wrong about that, because I've found over and over again that what I assume someone is getting from my actions is not what they're getting from my actions at all. In fact, it's way different. So telling an alcoholic what we expect and how we feel may have gotten us nowhere. He or she may just ignore us if we hadn't said anything. More talking would just be nagging. So sometimes we think some kind of action is necessary. This too is a form of communication. It says, I respect your right to live the way you want to, but I also have that right. I will not let your drinking be the most important thing in my life. This typical discussion at an Al-Anon meeting suggests approaches to such a difficulty. When my husband stops at a bar on his way home from work every night, there's no telling when he will turn up. If I have dinner at a regular hour with the children, he may come just as we're finishing. Then he's highly indignant because we didn't wait. I've tried fixing his plate and keeping it warm, but by 10 or 11 it's dried up and he's just as likely to hurl the plate and all at me. I know I can't reach him with reasoning, so what do? Well, one member answered, tell him on an occasion when he's sober that you want the children to have their meals at a regular hour and you want yours too. So you'll have dinner at 6 whether he's home or not. Another member said, why say anything? Actions speak louder than words. If 6 o'clock leaves him ample time to get home from work, set your dinner hour for 6 and eat then, whether he's there or not. Then a third member spoke up. I disagree. It's true that actions speak louder than words, but if you don't say anything to him when he's sober, he won't know what to expect. You'll just have to have a scene the next time he's late, and it's impossible to reason with him when he's been drinking. You might explain to him that you haven't made this decision because you don't want him to eat with the family. That would be punishing him. It's just that you think the children would do better on a regular schedule. That's keeping the family from revolving around his drinking. And then a husband spoke up. After working hard all day, I would come home and find my wife too drunk to prepare dinner for my children and me. During a period when my wife wasn't drinking, I sat down and talked with her as calmly and reasonably as I could. I told her that she was the only one who could do anything about her drinking, but that I could take certain steps to see that her drinking would not affect me and our children as far as meals were concerned. I arranged with a neighbor to come and cook the dinner. This went on for 3 weeks. Then my wife asked for another chance. Although she still gets drunk nearly every night, now she at least waits until after she's cooked dinner. I think this is a case of changing the things we can. That's part of the serenity prayer. These suggestions have certain qualities in common. They are honest and candid. They are courageous and firm. They have no element of blame or criticism, and they are courteous. Again, it seems to be common sense, but a lot of us just don't get it. I needed this book. I didn't have any common sense. A very large order, but communication which has these qualities will accomplish several ends. It will confirm our individuality and dignity. The person who hears them cannot mistake their meaning. They carry no residue of regret for unfairness. Okay, now this is a good one about coping with anger. How much time do I have left? It's 10 o'clock.
10, 12 minutes.
Okay. What alcoholism is doing to us gives rise to resentment. Resentment creates anger, and our anger must be dealt with for our own health and growth. Living with an alcoholic can be a frustrating business, producing conflict after conflict. Even after the spouse has begun to absorb and use the principles of Al-Anon and has learned not to make a bad situation worse by arguing, the alcoholic's behavior will often make her seethe with anger. Both before and after sobriety is established, the alcoholic may say and do things that trouble her. The resentment may take the form of inner, unexpressed anger, or in those of us who are more volatile and high-strung, that's me, recurrent, senseless rages. I get mad at, like my kids. I bear a lot of guilt because, they were there, a lot of times she wasn't. You know how that works. If this self-destructive behavior is allowed to continue, no real growth, spiritual or emotional, can be expected. I want to share a quick personal story about that because, as I said, I'm embarrassed to say that I took out my resentment and anger on my children, even when they were just little innocent lives. I didn't know what else to do with it, and I did do that until I got into Al-Anon. And one day, they spilled a gallon of milk. In the past, I would become enraged just because I could, because it was a trigger or a catalyst. And I didn't. They still talk about that. My kids are in their 30s, and they still talk about, wow, Dad, when you didn't get mad at us. They couldn't believe it. They couldn't believe that I could just bite their heads off. Now that's progress. That's really humiliating for me to admit that. But that's what this is all about, is making real changes and finding a way to develop recovery that has a ripple effect. As it's said over and over in Unity, the ripple effect is so powerful. So before and after, here I didn't read this. Lost my place here, sorry. As we gain a deeper understanding of ourselves in the Al-Anon program, we learn more wholesome ways to relieve our feelings of hostility, by analyzing and uncovering their causes. Otherwise, they can have two undesirable consequences. Number one, We suppress the anger, turning it back into ourselves to fester, which can make us sick mentally and physically. Or 2, we take out our feelings on others. Sound familiar? Particularly our children, whose healthy development can be seriously hampered by an unreasonable and hostile parent. One member illustrated this at an Al-Anon meeting. When I first came into Al-Anon, a battered and defeated victim of many a brawl with my husband when he was drinking, I heard one phrase and I latched onto it. Keep your mouth shut no matter what he says. I thought that was all the magic I needed, so I immediately began to exercise massive self-control when he was drinking. I thought I was the picture of serenity. But it seemed to make him all the more furious. He wanted me to help create a full-fledged fight as usual. It's like, come on, engage. You know how it works. That's the dynamic. The worst, though, was what it did to me. It made me so frustrated, so nervous, that I began to take it out on my children. The least thing that they did bothered me, like a bit of spilled milk or childish wrangling, that would cause me to fly into an uncontrollable rage until I exhausted myself and sat trembling with fear at what my terrible temper was doing to my little ones. That goes deep for me, that cuts deep. I realized that I was punishing them for what had been done to me. I knew I would have to find other outlets for these feelings. Soon afterward, it was my good fortune, or maybe that's the way things happen in Al-Anon, to hear a speaker from another group tell a story very much like mine. She told us what she did about her anger instead of repressing it or venting it on innocent victims. Here's her story, just as she wrote it out for me afterward to help me solve my problem. When my husband was drinking, we used to do an awful lot of fighting. I realize now that I was often the one who started it when he came home drunk. The result was always the same. I'd end up boiling mad and helpless to do anything about it. To get rid of my nasty feelings, this is in parentheses, anger gave me a lot of energy. I would go out in the backyard and dig. I'd pretend I was digging a grave for my husband. I can't tell you how often I buried him in the backyard. Eventually, I had a nice big patch of ground that was all dug up to plant things in. Once the flowers and vegetables began to grow and I didn't dig anymore, I got a lot of relief out of pulling weeds and pretending they were his hair. All summer long, I used to bring my resentments to Al-Anon meetings in the form of bright bouquets. I have to share that I have a friend who just was talking the other day about how her sponsor had her go out in the backyard and dig. And believe me, this person did a lot of digging. And I wish I read this earlier in my sobriety, because that would have helped me a lot. You might feel like chopping somebody's head off. Chopping a bunch of vegetables for making relish gives you just as much satisfaction. And it's a good bonus besides. And when you feel like rubbing someone out, you can use that energy to scrub the floor or polish the furniture. And for a really satisfying outlet, one member of my group recommended making bread. You just take that ball of dough and pound and pummel it, just pick it up and thump it down on the board and knead it, stretch it as though you were pulling somebody apart, and the result is a batch of delicious, sweet-smelling homemade bread. A nice dividend to get from working out off our rages.
Hey, we have a...
Yes.
Yeah, I'm hoping before you get through, you'll let people share. I know you've got this plan.
I've already asked people if they wanted to share. So do you want to share?
Sure.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'd be happy to. It'll only take me 4 minutes. I went to Al-Anon for 5 years at a place, met every noon.
Al-Anooners. Yeah, Al-Anooners.
Pardon?
Al-Anooners. They've been meeting for decades.
Yeah, I was there for 5 years. I was there to try to learn how to communicate with a relative that was
alcoholic.
Mm-hmm. And my purpose for going there was to figure out a way to communicate with him. That never worked out, but I really benefited from it. I met a guy named Billy. We played golf together over 20 times, and I met several other people that we did.
I know who
socially.
you're talking about, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he's
Billy
a great
W.
guy.
Billy W. and his dad. And so we became good friends, played golf. I'll make this short. I could
Oh,
talk
no,
for
no,
30
no.
minutes.
Take your time.
And so I went there probably about 3 days a week for about 5 years. And they just met regularly every noon downtown. And
I was just there yesterday.
You're kidding.
I'm not kidding.
Oh, it's a good group. They've
moved
this
to a
was
different
back in
spot.
1990s.
Yeah,
So
they used
I
to
don't
be
know
on
what's like
Walnut
today,
Street.
but I was there between 1995 and 2000. I'll try to, I'll get off track. I'll keep this short. Okay, so anyway, I found out that what you go for, you don't always get. The last 24 hours, the first 18 was a nightmare, but the last 6 was the best 6 hours I've had in this century. So you never know what you're going to get until you get there. And when you get there, if you've got the right attitude and it's positive and you're open to the experience, anything can happen. I got over to the, I'll make this 1 more minute, go over to the Coyote Adobe Cafe yesterday after getting drenched in the downpour, taking the bus over there. And as I walked in the door, I met 2 ladies, and they said, "You look wet." And I said, "Yeah, I've been playing with the ducks." So we started a conversation, lasted for about 30 minutes, and then they were getting ready to leave, and I was getting ready to have my breakfast. I was ordering, anyway, it doesn't matter. So as I'm eating and they're leaving, this lady comes up to me and says, "Your meal's taken care of, and here's an umbrella. I've got 10 or 12 of them, and I don't need it. So I got a free meal, free umbrella." This is only, I'm not going to tell all of it. And so then so I was getting ready to leave. I was looking for my bus pass. And the manager comes up and says, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm looking for my bus pass. It's in this bag somewhere," because I brought a bunch of stuff from the hospital. So this lady comes up, puts a $20 bill in my pocket. She thinks I'm poor because I'm looking for a bus pass, and I'm got this big bag. So I gave it back to her. She said, "No, you need it more than I do." So I got $20. So, and it goes on and on. The rest of the day, I go out to this, I'm homestead, get my nails done, and it's $25. But the lady, I said, "Can I use the massage chair?" She said, "Sure, no charge." I used it for 90 minutes. I tried to give her a $20 bill. She wouldn't take it, so I put it on the table. She took it back. I mean, she wouldn't take it, so she put it back in my pocket. So I got a 90-minute back massage free. And
What
it
a
was
day
on
of
and on from there.
blessings. What a day of
blessing.
blessings.
So I could
Thanks
talk
for
for
sharing
hours.
about the
Okay.
Al-Nooners meeting.
But
It's
that wasn't
very-
a good group at Al-Anon.
It still is, and
yeah.
it's still
Okay.
ongoing.
Is there many people going?
There's usually 15, 20
Yeah,
people
we
there
used
every
to have
day.
10
Well, there used to be
20
like
people there.
30 or 40 there back
But I
when
never got the benefit that I went there for, but I got lots of other benefits.
Are we needing to wrap up?
No, you have 5 minutes.
Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead. Thanks for sharing. I was on this middle of this section. Is any vigorous exercise is a good outlet for anger. Sports like bowling or golf and tennis. And by the way, you can do what my son-in-law and his wife did. And my daughters and their spouses have done it too. Go over to that place where you can take the hatchets and throw the hatchets. All you got to do is like envision their head right there. Like,
No.
no, I mean it does take out a lot of hostility though. So, I'm joking about putting up the poster in somebody's head. That's my sickness. Anyway, in addition to that, concentrating on winning the game keeps your mind free from tormenting thoughts. A friend of mine told me she used to have a very sharp tongue and had developed a socially unacceptable vocabulary. I've got one of those. But she too often let loose on her children. I try not to do that. Someone suggested to her that she give vent to her verbal explosions in the shower. And she tried it. She found she could say anything she wanted to, which gave her a two-way benefit. She'd come out clean in body and mind. Another friend says she unloads her anger by writing down all the things she wants to say. Hey, journaling. If we can do that, we can be as violent as we please. Just look at Stephen King. That's how he's channeled all of his hostilities. Nobody else is going to see it anyway, of course, unless you publish it. The important thing is that anger is a natural reaction to a frustrating situation, and it truly is. We may not be able to control how we feel, but we can control what we do about it. Bottling up anger destroys our peace of mind and often takes physical form in headaches, backaches, and other discomforts. Anger should be recognized and released as quickly as possible and without guilt. Remember, if you hold that anger in, it will turn into resentment, it will turn into depression, actually. Of course, we must remember never to condemn the alcoholic for being sick. I'm going to repeat that. We must remember never to condemn the alcoholic for being sick. But that doesn't make the things that he or she does any easier to bear. We can pave the way for calm, reasonable communication with him or her only if we first find healthy outlets for our own negative feelings. Man, that's some wisdom right there. To wrap this up, I'm going to talk about what attitudes communicate. If an attitude expresses loving awareness or even a reasonable tolerance of the person we're talking to, what we say may fall on receptive ears. If it's an angry accusation or criticism, the situation can't help getting worse. A simple example might be an irritated spouse with a comment to deliver may hurl it at her husband as she would throw a stone at a dog. Her attitude instantly inflames him and a full-fledged row is started. If she does, in fact, feel for him the contempt she is expressing by her manner of communicating, it may well be a symptom of her own sickness and her need of healing guidance such as Al-Anon provides. The words we speak may be ever so gentle, but if the body language is belligerent, it belies the words we're saying. We may express things that may need to be brought out into the open because we doubt our own ability to handle them calmly and reasonably. We're afraid that the subject is controversial and will set off a quarrel. I could share on with this with others, but I wanted to finish with and conclude with a key word in communication. The alcoholics talk about hitting bottom. This again is a sharing by an Al-Anon member. I realized I hit my bottom. I realized that getting him sober in AA was only the beginning, that something had to be done about me, and I had to do it. In my utter desperation, I turned to Al-Anon like a drowning person going down for the third time. Something opened my mind to insights I had never accepted before. The first one was that my husband was an individual, a child of God, and not my property. The second one was my domineering was destroying our relationship if it had not already been destroyed beyond saving. And third, that I would approach my problem very simply and leave the result in God's hands, where it had always belonged. And I did it with a simple word, courtesy. And I'll finish with that.
That's beautiful.
Thank you for having me.
Nice.
Thank you.
Okay, so the regular announcements, don't forget the basket in the back of the room. The church survives on donations. Next week, the speaker here on August 7th is going to be Amy Burnett. She's talking on the topic of atomic habits. We're taking registration now for Spirit Explorers. My translation of that is Vacation Bible School. And it's for youngsters aged 3 to 12, and that will be August 12th and 13th. You can register online or here in person. And if you're interested in volunteering, be sure to see our junior Sunday school director, Jen Jones. We're also updating our database. If you've moved, changed your email address, have a new cell number, or would like to give us your in case of emergency contact information, please fill out one of the forms. If you're new to the congregation and would like to learn more about us, please see our welcome ambassador. Today is Beth DeLay.
She's a great ambassador.
We still have some spots open for sponsoring flowers for the sanctuary, and you can sign up in the hallway. If you're on the marketing committee, don't forget there's a meeting after church today. And also our big summer fundraiser is the beach party, and that's going to be August 5th. Tickets are on sale for $25. That includes dinner, a couple of drinks. There'll be live music, dancing, and a silent auction. Thank you. We're going to circle up now and say prayer. Thank you.